The first chapter begins with a frame depicting the harvest in the garden. A young maiden toils wearily, digging up potatoes. Her countenance exudes immense contentment, for this time she has achieved a splendid outcome. The earth rewarded her with a bountiful and fruitful yield, and the maiden exulted in her abilities exuberantly. As she gazed upon the rows of luscious potatoes that had sprouted from her own hands, she felt replete with joy and satisfaction. She was able to materialize her skills and knowledge into reality, and it filled her heart with pride. Every patch of land, every harvested potato plant bore witness to her talent and diligence. And such a splendid outcome was not surprising, for the earth proved exceptionally generous and fruitful this time. Every shoot, every root, every patch of soil she worked with responded eagerly to her efforts. It was a reward for all those hours she spent in the garden, tending to her plants and giving them care. The maiden, content with her accomplishments in the garden, concluded her tasks and prepared to leave the place. However, her attention was suddenly captured by this forest. The forest was a different world, where she somewhat forgot about her abilities and potential. She was amazed by the presence of such a splendid meadow amidst the green trees and bushes. This meadow was adorned with flowers, their colors blossoming in the sunlight. Reflecting upon her past work in the forest, the maiden began to ponder. Namely, she begins to reminisce about how she didn't always work in the forest with the same zeal and enthusiasm as she does now in the garden. Some time ago, when she started working in the forest, she often felt doubts about her skills and lacked sufficient self-confidence. She didn't submit to the land and nature with the same vigor and dedication as she does now in this garden. The narrative then unfolds into a journey through the main heroine's past. 14 years ago, her mother, who was the mistress of the estate called Aspentia, suddenly passed away. According to the law, all her possessions were supposed to be inherited by her biological daughter, who happened to be the main protagonist. This loss was a significant blow to the young maiden. She not only lost her mother but also her future and status. She was compelled to alter her life and assume responsibility for the estate, which became her inheritance. However, later it transpired that the fate of the main protagonist was an even greater trial. It was revealed that her father, Count Baseland, who was a son-in-law of the Aspentia family, had actually stolen all the valuable assets that belonged to her mother. Subsequently, this count married for a second time and replaced all the household staff with his own people. This news struck deep into the depths of the main protagonist's soul. She felt not only betrayal from her father, but also helplessness in the face of his unscrupulous actions. After enduring all the hardships, our main protagonist encountered yet another unexpected and dreadful tidings. Her father decided that Elrouse appeared frail and made the decision to send her to a convent so that she could regain her strength. This news shocked the main protagonist. She had not expected her father to make such a decision regarding her future. She felt indignant and helpless in the face of his authoritative actions. The main protagonist sensed that her entire world had shattered into fragments. This unjust act by her father became a great trial for the main protagonist, but it also provided her with newfound motivation and shaped her character. With a sense of abandonment, the main protagonist understood that her surroundings had turned away from her. There was only one road that led uphill to the cliff, a road that led to the Vieira Monastery. Beyond it lay the forest and the cliff. There was absolutely no possibility of leaving this forest without passing through or bypassing this ill-fated monastery. The main protagonist, as a noble lady, felt the need for a quiet and tranquil abode where she could find solitude and focus in silence and serenity. And thus, a special and extraordinary chamber was prepared specifically for her. Although the monastery provided the main protagonist with sustenance, the food that was delivered to her was so unpleasant and tasteless that she could barely consume it. This situation led to the main protagonist constantly feeling hungry. The unpleasant taste and unappetizing state of the food made her meal almost inedible. She was compelled to endure this, as it was her sole source of sustenance. Hunger and the lack of essential nutrients gradually took a toll on her health and physical well-being. The girl experienced immensely difficult moments when she felt helpless and yearned for an end to it all, including herself. However, despite enduring a series of trials, she managed to find the strength within herself to survive. In her resilience and will to survive, the protagonist resolved to assume the role of an ailing individual, thereby reducing the vigilance of the monastery monks and granting her the opportunity to prolong her life. Suddenly, she caught sight of other unfamiliar individuals from the monastery. The urgent need to return home evoked great determination and resoluteness within her. She was prepared to leave the monastery and embark on a perilous journey if it was deemed necessary. The importance of returning to her home surpassed any price or risk she could encounter along the way. The protagonist sensed that this moment was pivotal in her life and that she must seize it to alter her destiny. In haste and with heightened alarm, the protagonist rushed into her chamber and swiftly began gathering her belongings. She understood that time for contemplation was limited and could not afford to be noticed or impeded. Instead, the monks approached her door and demanded that she open it, as they had brought her food. The protagonist understood that she had no alternative but to respond to them. She did not wish to draw unnecessary attention or suspicion, so she opened the door and greeted the monks. Sincerely, she expressed gratitude to the monks for the delivered food and conveyed her appreciation. However, there emanated from her a pungent odor, reminiscent of decay, which immediately repulsed the monks. Having grasped this swiftly, they decided to withdraw promptly, leaving her in solitude. For the main protagonist, this came as an unexpected turn, as typically only one monk would visit her, yet today there were two. This sparked a certain astonishment in the young woman and gave rise to the supposition that her father might have sent an additional person to keep an eye on her. It intrigued her to clarify this matter without delay. The girl entered the kitchen and commenced gathering some essential items. The young woman discovered that the kitchen in the monastery was exceedingly unclean and unpleasant. It was a typical situation she was accustomed to witnessing. Nonetheless, she began gathering the necessary items for her journey. Being aware that she could procure fresh vegetables, berries, and fruits in the forest, the girl focused on what she wouldn't find there: sugar, butter, and milk. She understood that these provisions would be vital for sustaining her energy and preserving food supplies during the lengthy voyage. Having gathered her strength, the young woman swiftly became more alert upon hearing footsteps. She understood that it could be someone from the monastery or perhaps even a monk who had come to see her. Despite her unease, it was crucial for her to maintain composure and create the impression that everything was in order. The girl enacted a scenario in her mind and assumed a casual posture. She began engaging in an activity in the kitchen as if it were a customary occupation for her. It later transpired that the two individuals who had just visited her were indeed the same. They commenced a conversation regarding the allocation of cleaning duties for the day. Furthermore, it was revealed that a certain guest had arrived, causing significant agitation for the abbot. It also appeared that a substantial sacrifice had been made in relation to this matter. Subsequently, they continued their conversation, delving into the topic of a forsaken girl residing in a humble abode. That girl happened to be Lady Elrose. The young woman listened intently, straining to catch every word exchanged by the monks she had encountered earlier. She surmised that they were discussing her and the situation within the monastery. Curiously, why was she referred to as lady when it was believed she was nothing more than an ordinary woman awaiting her demise within the confines of this monastery? And then, they let slip that her father had passed away. This unexpected news of her father's demise struck the maiden profoundly. She felt grief, uncertainty, and even a modicum of relief, despite all the hardships he had inflicted upon her. She was adrift in a sea of emotions and thoughts, unsure of how to react to this revelation. However, this was not the greatest shock yet. It turns out that this girl was not merely a lady, but she was already a countess. This newfound discovery of her being a countess altered everything. She was astonished and shocked, yet at the same time, it elucidated some peculiarities and enigmatic events that had unfolded in her life. And now it became clear that the guest who had visited their monastery today was someone dispatched by the late count's wife. The count's wife was named Camilla. The maiden was not overly confident, but as far as she knew, according to the law of inheritance, the process should have taken place within a week of the death. Now Countess Elrose had to find answers to her questions and uncover the truth about her inheritance case. The monks continued their contemplations regarding Elrose, speculating that she would only remain here for a week. However, if they truly intended something of the sort, they would not have admitted her here at all. Considering that they came here on their own accord and bestowed a substantial sum of money to the abbot, they likely wished to unravel her mysteries. This greatly alarmed El Rouse. The uncertainty and enigmatic conversations of the monks heightened her anxiety, and she felt an urgent need for a plan of action to avoid danger or the disclosure of her secrets. Startled, the girl emerged from her room with thoughts that she was being targeted for elimination. El Rouse, in a state of shock, realized that her life was in peril. Engulfed by panic, she recalled how she had ended up in that dreadful place when she was just a little girl. This event had left a profound mark on her soul, yet over time she had learned to manage her emotions and reconcile herself with the fate she had been forced to accept. She had learned to be resilient and understood that the circumstances around her were not always within her control. Abandoned and without anyone by her side, she had to come to terms with this reality. Recalling all the harrowing experiences of her past, El Rouse felt a surge of frustration and helplessness. Painful memories of hunger, food scarcity, the inability to cook, and the loss of her desire for reading resurfaced, reminding her of periods of great torment and hardship. Subsequently, in the abandoned cottage of the hunter, she honed her survival skills by delving into his literary works. And later, she discovered this land. A land that held promise for cultivation and agriculture. Determined, she resolved to transform this place into a fertile field. El Rouse understood that cultivating food would be a pivotal aspect of her survival. Armed with a scant supply of seeds and the knowledge gleaned from the hunter's books, she embarked on her mission to convert the forsaken land into a fruitful expanse. She acquired the skills of tilling the soil, cultivating vegetables, harvesting, and utilizing the yield for her sustenance. Living with the meager provision of food every other day was no longer bearable, prompting her to take matters into her own hands. Therefore, El Rouse decided to depart at once. Initially, she contemplated escaping from that place, but it was unlikely to improve her situation. And on one occasion, she found herself compelled to return to the capital. It was then that memories of her beloved mother resurfaced. She had made a promise to her, assuring that she would inherit her garden and pleaded for its proper care. El Rouse fondly and nostalgically recalled her dear mother, who had been her pillar of support and inspiration. She felt immense gratitude for all the love and nurturing her mother had bestowed upon her throughout her life. Additionally, she had been gifted a necklace, which she still kept adorning her neck to this day. It served as her talisman of happiness. While cherishing the necklace draped around her neck, El Rouse also preserved a connection with her mother that remained unextinguished even in her absence. This necklace served as a poignant reminder to her of the strength of familial bonds, the importance of memory, and the legacy they had both forged. Eventually, El Rouse mustered the courage to escape, lest she meet a grim fate. However, to her dismay, she discovered that her head spun dizzily from the heights, rendering her unable to flee. Suddenly, she caught sight of a descent path from the cliff. When she first made her way down, she wept for an extended duration. On weekends, the monastery never provided her with sustenance, so she frequently descended from the precipice into the village. Reflecting on the past, El Rouse rekindled memories of her diligent labor and unwavering self-assurance. She embarked on the sale of books she had read and nearly memorized, swiftly acquiring the skill to earn money from it. This experience proved immensely valuable as it allowed her to procure necessary provisions and sustain herself. This success in the book trade served as validation of her diligence, fortitude, and determination to strive for her own happiness. She relinquished idleness and forged ahead, actively constructing her life. These reminiscences inspired her not to surrender and not to falter, but to persist in her struggle for her dreams and independence. The frame portrays a monk standing beneath Elrose's chamber, contemplating that she had already fallen asleep. He presumed it would ease his task to interact with or handle her. Yet to his disappointment, he did not find the maiden in the room. In that moment, he experienced profound indignation and exasperation. Instead, the maiden found herself far away from the monastery. She arrived in the capital, where her mother's house was located. There were numerous individuals there, most likely due to the ongoing war. Beastly creatures and enemy forces' troops had broken through the mountain range in the northern part of the territory, invading the empire and occupying a significant portion of its lands. Many people had lost their homes and families, and they were compelled to seek refuge in the capital. The empire swiftly assembled its forces, and many refugees, having lost everything, joined the imperial army to fight against the enemy and defend their country. Hurricane, the king of mercenaries, stood out prominently among them all. He always concealed his face behind a bandage, thus nobody knew his true appearance or age. Over the course of more than 3 decades, Hurricane had been a seasoned warrior, acquiring significant experience in battles and campaigns. Although the precise age of Hurricane remained an enigma, many believed him to be around 50 years old at that time. He had traversed numerous vicissitudes of life, earning immense respect among mercenaries and the martial class as a whole. Last year, the Emperor acknowledged Hurricane for his significant contributions and bestowed upon him a lofty accolade. Since then, Hurricane became a champion of the Empire, defending it against external threats and hostile forces. Although the war had long concluded, the reconstruction and establishment of the city were only just commencing. Elrose was at a loss as to what she should do now, finding herself in a complex predicament. The estate was teeming with Camilla's associates, and she was unfamiliar with their intentions or plans. According to the law, within a week of the Guardian's demise, their adult child must declare their intention to inherit their title and estate. Failure to do so in a timely manner would result in the right being transferred to the mother. Today marked exactly 1 week, so the young woman urgently needed to marry someone. Commoners were incapable of acquiring the entire estate. Thus, having weighed all her possibilities and limitations, she was left with only one viable option for her way out. This is a guild of mercenaries. Information has surfaced that they are willing to undertake any task if the payment is sufficient. The young woman had only 50 coins, and she dreamed of finding someone who wouldn't be too greedy so that she could utilize them for her own purposes. Eavesdropping on the conversation among the men, Elrose learned that the monks from the monastery were already present in the city, placing orders to search for the girl who had fled from Vieirath herself. This news evoked doubts and fear in her, as she understood that her secret could be exposed, and her life was in danger. The young woman immediately realized that she should seek an immediate escape from the situation and requested someone to be sent to her, any man with whom she would marry. And suddenly, as if from heaven, a lad stumbled upon her. People were chasing him, demanding money. The young lady, cognizant of her predicament and in need of assistance, resolved to give a chance to the lad who appeared before her. She comprehended that they could mutually aid each other, and he could potentially be the man she had been seeking, albeit everything had unfolded so serendipitously. Astonished and somewhat apprehensive, she halted and listened to his plea. Perhaps in this encounter, there was something more than mere happenstance, and they could discover a shared path that would aid them both in escaping danger and finding happiness. However, the young lady discerned that he was some sort of guardian of the gaming establishment and that he required assistance. She was suddenly inclined to depart, but he seized her and implored her not to leave, addressing her as dear one. The subsequent chapter unfolds within the same predicament between the young lady and the gentleman. However, the young man feigned that she was his spouse, as those individuals sought money from him and resorted to threats in order to obtain 50 golden coins. The young lady had no connection whatsoever with this individual and thus was unwilling to relinquish her last remaining funds. Perturbed, she stood before the young man, realizing that they had found themselves in a challenging predicament. He, on the other hand, continued to embrace her and feign being a loving husband. Yet, he softly requested her to lend him money, assuring her that he would undoubtedly return it to her. Yielding to the young man's influence, the young lady handed him the pouch of money, hoping that he would indeed repay her later. She felt perturbed and lost her bee-like wisdom, allowing herself to easily succumb to his enchantment. The young man, with his allure, caught the attention of ruffians who offered him employment. However, he declined their proposition. This turn of events created a flutter in the maiden's heart, as she felt deceived and used. Finding themselves alone together, the young man apologized to the maiden and expressed gratitude for her having saved him. He was a nobleman, and the maiden had no time to spare. She stated that he must repay his debt with his own body to her. As the young man listened to the maiden's proposition, he felt his heart quicken its pace. The scene then shifts to Camilla's estate, where she eagerly awaits the arrival of guests. A few days ago, a representative from the Merchant Association visited her, desiring to utilize her land for the construction of a gaming hall. Once the funeral of her husband concludes, he insisted that she sell him this vast estate, and she was expected to sign the contract immediately after the burial. She entertained sinister and dreadful plans, relieved that no one, especially his daughter whom she sent to the monastery, would hinder her in this endeavor. She aspired to sell everything and move to the south to live a life of luxury. Camilla felt that no one hindered her from realizing her plans, and this brought her satisfaction. Anticipating the arrival of guests, Camilla hoped that the meeting with the merchants would help determine the future of her estate and her own destiny. She embarked on planning how to achieve her goals and secure the desired life for herself. However, when Elrose appeared before her, Camilla was disillusioned. She stated that she had no chance to reclaim what was once hers, as she needed to be married. However, Elrose produced a marriage certificate and introduced her husband, Raxon. This unexpected encounter changed the situation for Camilla. She unfolded the marriage certificate before Camilla, which elicited surprise and a certain intrigue. Raxon was a stranger to her, but his presence and the marriage certificate brought forth new possibilities and raised questions about Camilla's future. However, the young man concealed his countenance, prompting the woman to demand that he show it to her. Camilla, although harboring doubts and a certain mistrust towards Raxon, was intrigued by his presence and the marriage certificate. She felt a desire to shatter Elrose's self-assured demeanor and assert her own strength. Thus, by insisting that Raxon revealed his face, Camilla aimed to see if he matched his appearance. When Raxon unveiled his countenance, it transpired that he truly was a handsome gentleman. Naturally, he conducted himself as a genuine affectionate companion towards her. He was very amiable, kind, and attentive. He immediately agreed to orchestrate this scheme and assist Elrose, although she cautioned him that it was rather peculiar to do so for money. But it was endearing of him, and he took it in stride. Moreover, they would inevitably part ways once everything regarding her estate was resolved. Both of them understood that their union was merely temporary and meant to conclude after the matters were settled. Thus, Elrose and Raxon became a team driven by the pursuit of their individual objectives. They discussed plans, devised strategies, and endeavored to alter circumstances in their favor. There was something extraordinary about their alliance, yet they were prepared to part paths once their interests were satisfied. In truth, Elrose never imagined that she would have to marry the first available suitor. It was a forced situation into which she found herself. Although Elrose agreed to this arrangement to solve her problems, she could feel doubts and unease. Even if she understood that it was only a temporary alliance, it was still a complex and unpredictable step for her. They were ready to embark on the journey to the family estate, but Elrose had one unresolved matter remaining. She intended to meet with a certain individual. Now, as the rightful heiress of her father and the Countess of Basel-End, she had become the mistress of this place. This encounter held significant importance for her, as she had to address matters concerning her status and inheritance. Later, Rukshan recognized the hired traders. Camilla informed them that a minor issue had arisen. The Countess of Basel-End and the president of the Traders' Association had acquainted themselves. If they had arrived a little earlier, they would have long since been able to sign the contract. However, it turned out that the young countess appeared after the signing of this agreement. Instead, Rukshan decided to confront those hired traders. But the young woman did not ask him to do so, as it was her personal issue. Suddenly, they began to attack and shout for them to be killed immediately. They seized Rukshan, but the young woman intervened for him, stating that he had no involvement in this situation. However, Rukshan did not see it that way, as he was now her husband. He appreciated this care from her, but he did not want his lawful wife to speak in such a manner. Camilla was in a state of fury due to the entire situation unfolding around her and desired to swiftly put an end to it all. She expressed her indignation, asserting that the girl who spent 14 years in the abbey had failed to learn any moral values. Camilla's perspectives, which had been shaped during this time, remained unchanged. Elrose expressed interest in the agreement forged between the woman and the traders. However, the woman explained that for a countess who had lost everything, owning and managing all these grand estates would be exceedingly challenging tasks. Therefore, she decided to sell them. Her father held on until the end and refused to sell his holdings, as he wished to preserve his pride. Although they could have left together for the South and lived there in harmony, wealth, and luxury if only they had sold this place. And here she herself made the decision to do so. For her husband had passed away, and there was nothing else holding her back from doing it. Elrose knew well her predicament and the absence of anyone who could stand by her side. Suddenly, someone arrived on their premises. It was a figure from the imperial court. Elrose was ordered to let them in, for otherwise Camilla would face reprimand for such treatment of the individual. It turned out to be Marquis Lection, the Minister of Finance for the imperial family. All were perplexed as to why he had arrived there. Elrose was filled with joy upon seeing this man, who was to be of great help to her. She sincerely expressed her gratitude to him, yet he was even more sincere to her, and said that it was truly he who should be grateful to the young woman. Surprised, Elrose asked why. It turned out that despite the fact that the Count had already squandered his wealth, he still possessed numerous territories throughout the country, as well as a considerable amount of treasures. Elrose realized that these resources could be utilized for the benefit of others. Filled with a fervent desire to help, she resolved to donate all of it, along with her estate, for charitable purposes. Camilla, who overheard the conversation, was troubled by what she had just heard. She was overwhelmed by fury and anger. She realized that despite her family's loss of a substantial portion of their wealth, she still possessed a considerable amount of estates and luxurious treasures. Camilla could not fathom how the young woman could even contemplate the notion of relinquishing all her possessions. Lately, Elrose had been wavering in her decision, uncertain about the course of action to protect her estate from Camilla. She understood that the most viable option for her was to transfer everything to the very man against whom Camilla dared not oppose. She felt it was the safest recourse, one that would ensure her tranquility and security. To relinquish such a vast expanse of land had never occurred before in history. Elrose made the momentous decision to sacrifice this place, yet she had one condition for the minister. The preservation of the garden and estate was paramount. Elrose made an unprecedented choice in history to part with such a substantial portion of her territory. However, she had one stipulation for Marquis Lection, the finance minister of the imperial family. The garden and estate were to be safeguarded. This garden and estate held a profound significance for Elrose, representing cherished memories of her past. She recognized the necessity of sacrificing the remaining territory, yet she was unwilling to relinquish the final fragment of her tranquility and personal reminiscences. Therefore, she sought to uphold the promise she had once made to her mother. The next chapter commences with a conversation between Elrose and Rukshan. The young woman handed him a small bag as a token of gratitude for his assistance with Camilla. It contained a multitude of coins. Rukshan was captivated and astounded, observing the gleaming coins in his hands. Minister Lection agreed to turn a blind eye to everything, and she further informed him that he need not repay the debt to her. The young woman was profoundly grateful to him for everything he had done for her. Honestly speaking, Elrose felt a deep fear of Camilla. However, when Rukshan displayed his unwavering courage and boldness, declaring that he could handle everything himself, she felt a newfound surge of strength. At that moment, the young man inquired about her plans, knowing that she had nothing at that time. Everyone around believed she had disappeared, so she decided to continue concealing everything and keeping her life shrouded in secrecy. The tranquil and serene garden, along with the opulent estate, continued to exist as long as the empire stood. Nothing brought greater satisfaction than knowing that her abode was protected and impervious to threats. However, the young man failed to grasp her perspective, as he couldn't fathom the advantages Elrose derived from such a decision. Indeed, outwardly, she gained no apparent benefits from this concealment and a life shrouded in secrecy. With a touch of sadness in her voice, the young woman admitted that undoubtedly she had always yearned for wealth, success, and all that accompanies such possessions. The Countess was suddenly summoned, and she recalled the important arrangement they had made with the young man before parting. She reminded him that they had agreed to meet next Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the government building. It was necessary, as they needed to finalize their separation. After meeting with the Countess, Rukshan met with the hired agent who brought him a report on the completed task. He informed him that everything had gone well and the mission had been successfully accomplished. However, Rukshan became curious whether his brother was aware of his return. Instead, the latter apologized and explained that he had been instructed to provide all the details of the work. Rukshan felt saddened and advised him to simply go and inform their brother that he had completed all the tasks requested. He explained that there was no need for additional protection, so tomorrow he could personally report to their brother. The young man lay in his bed, gazing at the ceiling, and his thoughts dwelled upon his new status, the status of a married man. He sensed the whimsicality of this situation, which had swiftly transformed his life. It was something entirely new for him. He had never anticipated that it would turn out this way. Rukshan reminisced about his first encounter with Elrouse. His heart was once again stirred by the emotions he had felt on that day. The memory of that moment remained vivid in his imagination. He envisioned her figure in his thoughts and became captivated, immersing himself in her beauty and grace. Her cascading chestnut locks, delicately flowing in the breeze, her gentle facial features expressing an unparalleled femininity, and her distinctive manner of movement, all of these enthralled him. Each encounter with Elrouse stirred an internal excitement within him. Suddenly, he expelled all these thoughts from his mind, for he needed to attend to his brother. If his brother were to discover that he had married, the situation would undergo a profound transformation. But it was all a falsehood. Otherwise, Elrouse would be lying beside him right now. He desired to spend his first night with her. Yet, he immediately banished these thoughts from his mind and resolved to wash up and finally retire to sleep. Weary from emotions and thoughts, he understood the necessity of rest to replenish his energy for future trials. Chapter 8 depicts Elrouse, who was left alone with her thoughts in the evening. In the serene garden, adorned with a gentle twilight, Elrouse stood on the terrace of her estate, relishing the tranquility and stillness. Feeling her loneliness, Elrouse often immersed herself in memories of the past, especially of her mother. She recalled those moments when her mother bestowed upon her a necklace that became a symbol of their closeness. The necklace ceased to be merely an ornament, but also a symbol of connection with the mother who had always been close to Elrouse's heart. When she was burdened, she would take the necklace in her hands, sensing the warmth and maternal love radiating from each bead. Suddenly, her necklace began to emanate a mystical power. Elrouse looked at her necklace in astonishment, sensing the energy that radiated from each bead. Enthralled by this unforeseen turn of events, the scene swiftly transitions to Rukshan's house. He couldn't let go of his thoughts in any way. Hence, he conceived the idea of taking a stroll in the garden. For if he were to lie down to sleep, it would surely be an ill-advised notion. He envisioned Elrouse in his thoughts and reminisced about his mother, whom he had never seen. Yet, upon reflection, she was undoubtedly a noble soul. Rukshan recalled how his mother was described as a person who always radiated. He envisioned her in his thoughts, but never had the opportunity to behold her countenance. However, what he had heard about her evoked profound respect and gratitude within him. His father always had a joyous countenance when he spoke of her. His mother was renowned for her beauty, but it was not merely external radiance. Suddenly, Rukshan entered his father's study and inquired about the purpose behind the bouquet of flowers. It turned out that His Majesty the Emperor had passed away. Instead, he continued to regale the young boy with tales of his mother, depicting her as the empress of their land. Long ago, when the empire emerged victorious from war, she lived in seclusion and bore him. Rukshan avidly listened to his father as he recounted the history of their family. The revelation that his mother was an empress and gave birth to him in solitude stirred his emotions. He felt a profound sadness in his heart, imagining the loneliness she must have endured during that time. His father approached Rukshan, holding the necklace in his hands. This necklace, once belonging to his mother, served as a symbol of their lineage, an inheritance from the empress. Rukshan learned that war was imminent, and Harkin was mortally wounded during the evacuation of the townspeople from the battlefield. This news struck Rukshan deeply, and his heart became filled with concern and apprehension. From that moment on, his father revealed to him that Rukshan was to be the king of Harkin's mercenaries. This revelation astonished Rukshan, as he had never suspected such lineage. The man who posed as his father had actually led the mercenaries in evaluating the townspeople. Rukshan came to the realization that his supposed father was, in fact, Harkan, the king of the mercenaries. Lost in profound contemplation of his future fate, Rukshan sensed the approach of the emperor. He promptly acknowledged the emperor's presence, bowing before him with respect and humility. However, the emperor, aware of his acquired power and authority, did not desire Rukshan to approach him with such subservience. Sensing the emperor's support and trust, Rukshan realized that he could not simply fade into the shadows and absence. In the climactic battle between the imperial army and the monsters, tension and violence reached their zenith. The emperor personally led his forces, guiding them towards victory. It appeared that the imperial army had the upper hand, but suddenly the situation shifted. The enemy had a cunning plan that led to the isolation of the emperor's army. Witnessing this assault, Rukshan experienced uncertainty and anguish in his heart. He resolved to do everything within his power to aid the emperor and ensure his safety. Rukshan, alongside his comrades, embarked on a perilous mission, for if they did not assist him, he would simply perish. Rukshan and his allies fought with all their might, displaying great courage and determination. They pushed through the enemy ranks, annihilating the fiends and aiding the emperor in escaping the encirclement. Thanks to the valiant efforts of Rukshan and his comrades, the emperor managed to rescue himself and emerge from this perilous situation. This feat of Rukshan became enshrined in the annals of the empire as a testament to loyalty and heroism. Even to this day, the emperor remained grateful to Rukshan for his salvation. Reflecting upon that moment when he rescued the emperor and received his acknowledgement, Rukshan felt a profound sense of gratitude. He comprehended that if he hadn't aided the emperor then, everything could have been different. As soon as Rukshan came into the world, he departed from the imperial court, and his mother had no idea of his appearance. She believed he resembled his father. That is precisely why the emperor recognized him. He became deeply captivated by Rukshan, his demeanor, his appearance, and his attitude. He didn't even consider deceiving him as his own brother, who had appeared so unexpectedly. For those who were aware of this truth, Rukshan was a traitor, so they were always on guard. In truth, the emperor was already well informed about all of Rukshan's actions, especially regarding his marriage. The 9th chapter carries forward the previous line of events. Rukshan felt apprehensive in the presence of the emperor, yet he was astonished by his candor. The emperor made a frank remark about Rukshan being 26 years old and the potential difficulty he may face in finding a suitable partner in the future. These words from the emperor struck Rukshan, but he resolved not to lose heart. Subsequently, he confidently declared that he had gathered a few candidates for him, thus compelling him to meet and ultimately marry someone among them. Listening to Rukshan's confession, the emperor was captivated and simultaneously astonished. He had not expected such news from his brother, but he sensed that Rukshan spoke with genuine enthusiasm and love. The emperor understood the importance of having a close companion in life and being happy with them. He spoke of how the people of the North always find a lifelong partner for themselves. They approach the selection of their partner with great care, considering not only physical attractiveness but also shared values, ideals, and compatibility of characters. Hence, it would be wise for him to be more cautious in his choice. Then he requested that the other person provide more details about his prospective bride. Rukshan, upon seeing the emperor's interest, began to feel apprehensive and proceeded to elaborate further on his intended spouse. He portrayed her as a lovely and delicate blonde girl with tender skin and shimmering azure eyes. Her hair resembled a golden halo, framing her countenance. She possessed extraordinary allure, yet her beauty was not solely external. She radiated inner harmony and tenderness. After Rukshan provided a detailed description of his intended bride, the emperor concurred that bringing her to the imperial court might be an imprudent decision. Both of them comprehended that such a profound shift in the social status of the young woman could engender peril and discomfort for both her and the emperor himself. The subsequent scene transports the viewer to Elros. Elros stood beside the designated spot where she and Rukshan had agreed upon their separation. She felt uneasy and out of place in this unfamiliar environment. Moreover, Elros felt that she couldn't fully trust the people in the estate where she resided. She sensed animosity and hostility from many individuals who didn't accept her as an equal member of the community. In the estate, Elrose didn't even have the opportunity to have a sip of water. Although it would be advantageous for her to remain in marriage with Rukshan until everything is resolved for many reasons, love, safety, social status, these thoughts waged a battle in her mind, colliding against one another. Yes, Elrose, standing there, awaiting Rukshan, was ready to meet him with mixed feelings of hope and apprehension. But suddenly, someone behind her inflicted a sharp and piercing pain, as if with a needle. The girl began to lose consciousness and did not understand what was happening. She felt very unwell and heard Camilla's voice. She wanted to talk to her, because the person she had sent to her had lost a leg and 2 fingers. However, the maiden perceived and heard nothing at all of what she was saying. She believed that her demise was imminent. Time for Elrose became fluid and disorderly. In the fleeting instant before Elrose's world began to dissolve, she caught sight of Rukshan in a distant point. Once those around noticed Elrose's condition and comprehended her critical state, they sprang into immediate action, striving to save her. Camilla, in turn, resorted to offering justifications and excuses for Elrose's weakness, asserting that it was the result of drug use, thereby implying that Elrose could not regain consciousness. She went so far as to claim that if her limbs were severed, she would immediately awaken. However, at that moment, Rukshan intervened. He immediately stepped in and demanded an explanation for what was happening to his wife. He was filled with concern and bewilderment over the unfolding situation. On the other hand, Camilla harbored deep resentment and hatred towards Rukshan, viewing him as an obstacle in her path. She wanted to rid herself of his presence and ensure that he would not hinder her plans in the future. Camilla was certain that he would not be able to handle multiple mercenaries on his own, so she ordered them to apprehend him. The assault commenced. The mercenaries, who were under her employ, dutifully carried out her command and began closing in on Rukshan, armed to the teeth. Each of his movements was calculated and precise, enabling him to effectively defeat his opponents one by one. The mercenaries under Camilla's command unexpectedly encountered Rukshan's incredible power and skillfulness. They were bewildered and astonished by his determination and devotion to protecting his beloved. In a matter of minutes, the battle concluded, and Rukshan emerged as the victor. The 10th chapter of the manga begins with Elrose awakening and immediately exclaiming the name of Camilla. She was disoriented about her whereabouts. Rukshan entered the room where Elrose was staying and cautiously inquired about her well-being. She sighed, displaying a mingled sense of feebleness and discomfort, and attempted to orient herself in her surroundings. Rukshan observed her perplexed thoughts and uncertainty, thus deciding to lend her assistance. He approached closer, drew near to her, and vowed to remain by her side until she fully recovered. With gentleness in his eyes, Rukshan offered her a bedside chair adorned with breakfast. Placing it beside her on the bed, he beckoned her to partake in the meal and reminded her of the need to gather her strength. The physician warned of possible dizziness and lightheadedness while the poison worked its way out from within. The young lady immediately inquired about what had happened to Camilla and her mercenaries, but Rukshan assured Elrose that she had nothing more to fear from them. The lad recounted that after the assault on Elrose, he invited her to his hotel, where they were safe. Rukshan divulged to Elrose that he encountered her at the site of their meeting when she was already unconscious. He heard the clamor and cries that caught his attention, and he approached to ensure her well-being. There, he encountered Camilla and her mercenaries, who were attempting to whisk her away. Rukshan elucidated to Elrose that he had called for security assistance, and that all the criminals, including those who attempted to abduct her, had been apprehended. He reassured her that these criminals would not go unpunished and that they would face trial. He explained that the illicit actions directed against her constituted a grave offense, and law enforcement authorities would take their case under their jurisdiction. According to the law, they would be held accountable for their deeds, and they faced legal prosecution and appropriate punishment. Such information brought solace to Elrose, for she knew that justice would take its course and those who sought to harm her would not escape retribution. It instilled in her a sense of justice and protection. Simultaneously, Rukshan emphasized that their primary task was to focus on recovery and building their future together. He exerted every effort to ensure Elrose's safety and reassure her, and together they managed to endure this challenging situation. Rukshan insisted that Elrose partake of nourishment, understanding that after enduring such emotional and physical exhaustion, she needed strength for recuperation. Sensing hunger and hopeful that a delightful breakfast would improve her well-being, she acquiesced. After Elrose finished her meal, Rukshan inquired about their future plans. Elrose contemplated Rukshan's question and recalled that donations could be revoked within the year according to imperial legislation. She asked the young man how long it would take to depart from the capital. Elrose experienced a blend of emotions, excitement, fear, and a desire to alter her destiny. He inquired if she had any funds to leave just like that. She affirmed that she did. She possessed belongings, stolen by Camilla, which were at her estate, and she had the chance to retrieve them. Additionally, she recalled the incident when her mother's necklace began to emit magic. She sensed that the necklace had begun to radiate magic and impart certain instructions to her. Giving it her attention, she noticed a singular loophole in the picture. This stirred even greater intrigue and a desire within Elrose to unravel the mystery concealed behind the necklace. She understood that this loophole could be the key to something greater awaiting her in the future. It unveiled a highly valuable item, harboring the password to a bank vault. Enthralled by this revelation, Elrose began to contemplate the possibilities that lay before her. She possessed 5 reserve funds. She recollected how her mother had urged her to turn to the necklace in times of difficulty. It turned out that her mother had kept 100,000 gold coins, revealing her mother's entrepreneurial spirit. Suspecting the existence of a substantial sum of 100,000 gold coins, Elrose shimmered with dreams of a luxurious life and a secure future. Returning to her conversation with Rukshan, the young woman was still unsure of her future plans and actions. She simply desired to distance herself from the capital city. Then Rukshan proposed that she relocate to his native city. Under the influence of Rukshan's offer to move to his hometown, Elrose pondered. It was a serene and picturesque place, so it was likely to appeal to her and be suitable. The young woman inquired further about this place. It was a small town in the north. Elrose was thrilled to learn that this small town in the north aligned with her desires. She had been searching for precisely such a place, small, unassuming, and with fewer people. This meant that she would be able to find there the tranquility and seclusion from the noise and worries that she had been seeking for so long. Indeed, the presence of fertile land was yet another great advantage for the young woman. Fertile soil presented a plethora of opportunities for agricultural and horticultural development. She could cultivate various crops, including vegetables, fruits, grains, and other plants. This signified that the young woman could autonomously cultivate her own sustenance and have access to fresh, organic provisions. She could establish her very own garden, where fruit trees, herbs, and flowers would flourish. This not only ensured her nourishment but also bestowed the opportunity to revel in beauty and natural abundance. Thus, the presence of fertile land in this serene and picturesque locale added even more allure for the young woman, compelling her to envision not only tranquility and privacy but also the potential to forge a stable and comfortable existence, to grow, and to manifest her dreams. Several years had passed since the North became a part of the empire. The young man continued to recount that it was such an untamed land that even nobles dared not venture close. The young woman began to ponder over Rukshan's intentions and the nature of their relationship. The fact that their marriage was merely a facade could prompt her to harbor suspicions regarding Rukshan's motives. She may doubt whether he truly loves her or simply uses her for his own gains. Perhaps the young woman believes that Rukshan may have many other women in his life, including superior women, and her suspicions revolve around his potential harem. This could evoke feelings of danger, mistrust, and vulnerability within her. Rukshan, of course, denied it all and decided to ask the young woman if she would become his companion. The young woman was surprised by Rukshan's question about whether she would become his companion. The term companion in the context of the northern inhabitants referred to marital partners. This question could indicate that Rukshan expressed interest in them being more than just partners on paper. For the northern people, marriage held great significance and was perceived as a sacred union before God. It was very romantic for her from his perspective. Rukshan explained that his stepbrother, the emperor, is attempting to compel him into a marital union for political purposes. However, Rukshan feels independent and is unwilling to enter into marriage. He sees in the young woman the potential to use her as a contender for the role of his companion to divert attention from his stepbrother and the emperor. It was a challenging decision for Rukshan, but he believes it to be the best way to safeguard himself from a forced marriage and preserve his independence. He desired to create an illusion that he already had a partner in order to appease his stepbrother and evade an unwanted union. However, the young woman consented to this union because Rukshan had aided her in many ways and even saved her life. Moreover, her relatives would not suspect her involvement in a fictitious marriage. Thus, they entered into such an agreement for a few years. Now, they both embark on a new phase of their lives together, where they must adapt to the roles of companions and jointly confront the challenges that may arise along their path. This alliance can prove advantageous for both parties, fostering mutual support and protection in a world where political unions hold great significance. Then a scene is depicted where Rukshan acquires a carriage for Elrouse. On one hand, she appreciated his kindness and cared towards her, feeling grateful for his assistance and saving her life. On the other hand, she felt indebted to him and uneasy due to his generosity. They sought shelter among the people and secured themselves a room. They were provided with a bridal chamber. They entered the bridal chamber, and before them unfolded an enchanting scene. Everything around was adorned with flowers of various colors, their fragrance permeating the air. Gripping the statuette for defense, Elrouse trembled and surveyed her surroundings attentively. Despite the atmosphere being filled with romance, her caution compelled her to remain vigilant. In the following chapter, the narrative unfolds around a young man seated at a table, bearing a spider tattoo on his shoulder. This tattoo was skillfully crafted, attesting to the hand of a professional artist. Rukshan noted that such tattoos are only done by true craftsmen. He explained to Elrouse that they were assigned the bridal suite, as if they had requested separate rooms. The spider-tattooed fellow would have pilfered their chamber in the darkness of night. He divulged that many mercenaries they encounter are criminals, driven by illicit pursuits. They seize opportunities to pilfer rooms and valuable possessions, especially from unsuspecting tourists who remain oblivious to the lurking danger. Rukshan surmised that they wouldn't encounter such individuals here, given the colossal stature of Harkan, the king of mercenaries. However, the mercenary Rukshan was entirely distinct. Later, Elrouse recounted that she had witnessed a dragon and a lion on the way. Intrigued, she inquired whether they symbolized something special or held hidden meaning. Unaware of the dark essence of mercenaries, Elrouse innocently posed this question, oblivious to the potential danger these individuals could pose. She contemplated the possibility that Rukshan, her companion, might also be a mercenary. Rukshan fell momentarily silent, realizing that Elrouse was unaware of the true nature of mercenaries and their potential danger. He felt an internal struggle, debating whether to disclose the truth about himself and his past or to conceal it, in order to protect her from potential harm. Rukshan understood that this was a crucial moment, one that could greatly influence their relationship and trust in each other. Then came the time when Elrouse and Rukshan lay in the same bed. Rukshan was greatly enthralled by this, for it was their first night together. He decided that starting from the next day, they would rent separate rooms, as he simply wouldn't be able to get any sleep. But then Elrouse appeared in her dream, her mother's voice cautioning her to approach the choice of her husband with care and responsibility. The girl woke up and found no trace of Rukshan beside her. She caught a whiff of soap. Rukshan entered the room, as he had awakened earlier. He smiled and greeted Elrouse with a morning repast he had prepared. The table was adorned with an array of delectable dishes that looked exceedingly appetizing. Elrouse was pleasantly surprised and sincerely expressed her gratitude for this unexpected surprise. After breakfast, Elrouse and Rukshan took their seats to discuss the plans for the day. Rukshan explained that he needed to visit the pawnshop to exchange the gold they had acquired for the local currency. He elaborated that there was a separate currency in effect at midnight, which would be more convenient for their future transactions and purchases. Elrouse attentively listened to Rukshan and comprehended the significance of this matter for their journey. The next chapter depicts the arrival of the couple at the pawnshop. The swindler at the exchange booth attempted to deceive them and propose a lower value for their coins. However, Rukshan was aware of Elrau's profound fatigue. Elrause altered her expression, initiating a performance in front of Rukshan. She concocted a tale that they simply needed to travel further north and required funds for additional expenses. However, it was a complete fabrication. Ultimately, the pawnbroker caught on to the situation and increased the value of the coins. The young man was impressed by this narrative, transforming 8 golden coins into 200 drachmas. But Elrause would not settle for anything less. They received far more than they had anticipated. Rukshan and Elrause emerged from the pawnbrokers with smiles on their faces. They were delighted by their success and advantageous deal. Now they could continue their journey with greater financial means, granting them more freedom and comfort. With these additional funds, they could further explore the world and revel in the adventures that awaited them in the future. Their journey became even more intriguing and captivating. Trading was ingrained in Elrause from birth, hence she was captivated by her aptitude. Next, they planned to go on a shopping spree. Elrause was thrilled by the prospect of shopping and seized the opportunity to acquire items and garments that appealed to her. She rejoiced in her newfound acquisitions and was delighted to have the ability to choose a style and items that suited her perfectly. Rukshan displayed attentiveness and thoughtfulness as he recommended her to purchase something warmer. Armed with knowledge of the northern weather conditions, he understood that it could be quite chilly there. He persuaded her to pay attention to warmer and more comfortable garments that would ensure comfort during their journey. Suddenly, they passed by saplings, capturing the girl's attention greatly. It reminded her of the time she clandestinely planted fruits in the monastery. Elrause gazed upon the saplings with fascination, evoking memories of her days in the monastery where she secretly cultivated fruits. This reminder evoked a blend of joy and nostalgia within her. Elrause finally felt liberated. The maiden beseeched Rukshan to divulge more about his city. She ardently desired to choose a splendid and cozy abode, cultivate fresh vegetables and fruits, bake fragrant bread, dine in the local restaurant, and engage in conversations with new acquaintances throughout the year. Now she had the freedom to pursue anything. Here they arrived in the city of Eldon. Surprisingly, it was rather thriving after the war. Subsequently, Rukshan introduced her to his residence. He merely needed a slight refurbishment. Then a man approached them and began mocking the fact that he had brought the girl as if he had fallen in love with her. But that man knew his secret, the one Rukshan had so carefully concealed. In the eyes of the townspeople, he was a commander. Therefore, he demanded never to be referred to in such a manner again. They were eager to catch a glimpse of Rukshan's new maiden, and as they entered the house, they saw Elrause, gasping for breath amidst the fire. If you don't want to miss my new videos, support the channel by subscribing and don't forget to like the video.